Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. As it was expected, President Trump has launched a trade war. He has imposed tariffs on the whole world. He has single-handedly challenged the whole world and the trading system of the world. Everybody is trying to respond it, trying to understand it, and that in that perspective, we are also trying to understand why President Trump has launched the trade war. If we look at historical data and from the historical point of view, the globalization and trade has benefited the humanity. For example, the recent wave of the globalization, which started from the 60s onward, it has immensely benefited the world. For example, in 1970, the global GDP was $3 trillion. But in 2024, the global GDP has been ballooned to 110 billion US trillion dollar. It's enormous, and it is increased due to the globalization process. Because when the whole world was interacting, the production increased, the volume of the economy increased. When they were exchanging the goods and services, the demand for the need of those services and those commodities increased. That's why the volume of economy increased. Then why President Trump is imposing this tariff? We have to find out that. If we look at the data, American data, economic data, economic and the social data of USA, we can find some clues why President Trump has launched the trade war. First of all, if we look at the growth rate, from 1969 onward, we have seen there is a declining trajectory in GDP growth rate of USA. If in 1969, if we are on average, on a moving average of 20 years per annum, GDP growth rate was 4.4%. That has been decreased in 2024 to 2.1%. That is substantial decrease. It has impacted the economy of US. It has also impacted the growth rate of per capita GDP, which has come down to 1.3%. Why it is happening? The simple answer is there can be many other indicators. We can find the indicators, we can talk about the policies, we can do a number of things. But the major indicator which we are looking at this point of time, which seems to be the trendsetter, that is the lower gross fixed capital formation in US economy, which fell from 8.1% to 5%. That is again a substantial decrease. It has greatly impacted the GDP growth rate because there are certain indicators. There's a strong correlation between the gross fixed capital formation, or we can say the net fixed investment, and the GDP growth rate. When the investment is increasing, when the gross fixed capital formation is increasing, that's when your economy is expanding. That's when your GDP will be growing. But unfortunately, in the case of the US, for the last 4 or 5 decades, it is going down. On the other hand, the US has increased the consumption. In the consumption component, if I look at the share of the consumption in the national GDP of US, it has been increased. And for that purpose, US have to import a lot of commodities, a lot of goods and services to meet the need, or you meet the demand of the goods and services in the local market. And there are some studies which indicate that consumption, if you meet a consumption by importing, it creates negative consequences for the GDP. So if we look on the two sides, so growth rate is decreasing. It has given birth to inequality and poverty in a USA economy. If I look at the data, the Gini coefficient for the US in 2024 was 0.47. That's a very high, especially among the developed country. It is the highest, the Gini coefficient among the developed countries. It means inequality level is quite high in USA. And why it is happening? Because from the system, there's a problem of the economic system. The people with the money or with the resources, they earn more. They are enhancing their wealth more. And the people with those resources, they are not benefiting from the economy or the economic opportunity. That's why the middle class is shrinking, the upper class is increasing, or the lower class is increasing. For example, if you look at the data in 2021, so there was 30% upper class which increased from the 27% to 30%, and there was an increase of in the lower class from 11% to the 19%. And again, if you look at the number of the middle class, it shrank from 61% to 51%, because either the people are going down or people are the share of upper class is increasing. That is a worrisome situation, and that's why the poverty is also increasing. If you look at the data in the 2024, so 37 million people, they are living below the poverty line in USA. But the most shocking point is that the 49 million people, they are living just above the poverty line. That means they can fall into a poverty trap due to any shock, due to a climate shock, environment shock, or economic shock like the trade war is going on. If it is intensified, so there is all possibility these people can fall into the poverty trap very easily. And the 49 million are a very high number in the context of the total population of USA. Why it is happening? Again, there is a question. Simultaneously, there is the education and the skill gap in USA. The skill gap is increasing. There was a survey conducted by a company. They indicated that the top CEOs, they rate that they face the skill gap of around about 70%. And especially in the case of the financial services and the technology, it becomes 75% and the 73%. Again, it's very high. So that will impact further, and it is feared that that can bring more people into the poverty trap, and there may be more transition from the middle class to the lower class. It can create the negative consequences for the US economy. So these are the few indicators. When we look at these indicators, so it created divide in the society of the US. So there was a sharp divide between have and have-nots. Some people, they having a lot of money, and some people they don't have. For example, the top 1%, they are having almost 50%, as there are some rough estimates. If I'm wrong, so my apologies. And then the lower 50%, they have almost nothing. So that divide is going on, and the short widening up with the passage of the time. Here it created distrust in the society. The people were annoyed, they were angry with the system. They were saying, so the military-industrial complex, it is causing the problem for them, and the military-industrial complex or the deep state had created the poverty, and these are all problems for the people. That's why they started to raise their voices against the deep state. President Trump perfectly analyzed the situation and built his campaign. He started to talk to the people, look, this deep state is bad. Our economy is not expanding. Then he pinpoint China as a rival and say, look, China is a problem for our economic development. China is sending the cheap products to our market. That's why our economy is not working. So China is subsidizing its economy, and China is making a lot of money from US, and that's when their trade deficit has been enhanced. So we have to take care of the China, and that's why during his first term as a president, he launched different tariffs on Chinese products. But it does not impact China as much it impacted the USA. For example, in 2017, the total trade deficit of US was $792 billion US. After the tariffs with the China and other countries, so the trade deficit of USA has become 1.2 trillion in 2024. If President Trump was right, then the trade deficit should decrease, but here the trade deficit has been increased. If you look at the statistics of the China, so total trade of China in 2017 was $4 trillion US. In 2024, the total trade of China was $6.1 trillion. So China's trade surplus increased handsomely. Now it's around about $950 billion US. So that means China was not exploiting the US economy. Rather, the problem was somewhere else. As I spoke already, the problem was low gross capital formation. The problem was higher focus on the consumption. The problem was inequality, the problem was poverty, the problem was the widening gap of the skill and education levels. So these were the real problems. They were bothering to the people. And the President Trump built on that. And he won the election again to satisfy, for me, maybe I'm wrong, to satisfy his political base, the people to whom he was convincing he will change everything for them, to bring the positive change for their life. He has introduced or launched this trade war. But there is a fear. So this trade war again create negative consequences for the for the US economy, which can further enhance the poverty, or which can further enhance the inflation, which can lower the GDP growth rate, and will negatively impact the American society. It can increase the poverty. It can increase the inequality. If it happen, God forbid, so it will create problem for the Trump himself, because his political base will again and will start to blame him for the most worries. So he may become unpopular in the future. It is fear that. But let's see how it turns out that. But there are also some people who says that, but I don't buy that argument. They say, so he has introduced these tariffs just to lower the interest rate on the bonds, because he feels that when the trade will be lower, so company will not making much profit, so people will invest in the bonds, and the bonds, their interest will go down. And it is he thinks, so people say that, some experts say that, so then when there will be lower interest rate, it will be beneficial for the US. Why? Because in 2025, and I think they have to pay back trillions of dollars in the debt. If they have to borrow new money at the higher interest rate, it will bring more cost for the economy. If they bring have money at the lower cost, so it will not damage too much to the American economy. That is another perspective. But I still say that tariffs or the trade war never help. Rather, it's create more problem. So the world have to find out how to respond it, and more specifically, the American policymaker will have to understand they are not doing any service to the world or to their own economy. Thank you.